When I first looked at this reading, I wondered what would I do with it. Really? What does one say about this little centurion? Do you know how many troops a centurion commands? No. No. They're part of a 100 unit that commands smaller units. They only command 80. Yeah, I just learned that this week too. Yeah, so you would think that because they're centurions. So he just commands this small number of troops. And yet somehow he's heard about Jesus. And he hasn't just heard about Jesus as some Jewish itinerant preacher that's wandering around saying stuff. We know he's been a good man before this happened because he helped them with the temple. Now this is pretty unusual because the Roman soldiers were the oppressors of the Jewish people at this time. So to have an oppressor who's a good guy that's helping out this particular band of Jewish folks was pretty unusual. And he says, you know what, I get it. And so if you could do this, that would be great. And my first thought was, isn't it great when we get a miracle? Isn't it wonderful if we're the recipient of a miracle? And then I thought about the other 100 centurions, the other 99, who maybe didn't get their miracle. And I thought, well, that can't really be what this is about then. So what is it really about? And I think it's about faith. I think it's about faith. And some of the Bible commentators will say there's a transition here. We're no longer in the countryside with Jesus. We're now coming back to Capernaum, which is a pretty prosperous, populated fishing town. But we're also transitioning from the words of Jesus to the works of faith lived out. Okay. So I thought, all right, so what does this whole faith thing mean? St. Augustine gives us a pretty traditional understanding of faith. He says, faith is to believe what you do not see. Probably we could find that in Merriam-Webster too. Maybe they got it from Augustine. And he says the reward of this faith is to see what you believe. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe. Now if you think about that, if you believe that God is a God of compassion, that our God is this God of love that we keep reading about in our Christian scriptures, if you believe that, and if you live your life according to the call to be compassionate and loving, what I think we see is what Augustine says, and that is it's like our eyes have been opened and we see other people being compassionate and loving in the simplest of ways. Is that not true? If you're walking peacefully and compassionately through the streets of your neighborhood, does that somehow not become part of what surrounds you? We have major construction at our house, at a street not far from us, and so all the traffic from a busy street has been rerouted through our neighborhood. And I walk the dogs at least a couple of times a day. And almost always, whoever's driving, whether it's an SUV or one of the big dump trucks that's unloading and loading dirt, when they see me with the two dogs at the side of the road, they slow down and move over. And many times, they wait. So there's something about what Augustine says. When our eyes are open, when our hearts are open to be and to live out what Jesus asks us to be, persons of peace and compassion, somehow we're giving that out and getting it back. Don't you think? It's not just me, right? It's not just me. John Dewey. John, remember John Dewey? What do you know about him? Nancy remembers him. He's an American philosopher, psychologist, and educator. Anybody read Dewey stuff on education, philosophy? I'm sure some people who are teachers read that. I love it. He says, to me, faith means not worrying. I've never wanted a tattoo, but I'm thinking about this one. Faith means not worrying. If there's anything I've mastered in 63 years, it's the art of worry. And you know what? It has a price you pay for mastering it. And so, when I worry about this congregation, or I worry about what's happening in the church, or I worry about our finances, it takes a toll. Whatever you're worrying about takes a toll. So I make a conscious decision when I start to worry, not to worry. To believe that we are doing what we are being called to do, and God will help us do that. Not saying God's going to take care of everything, we can just sit back, have a beer. I'm not saying that. But when we've done everything we've been called to do, and everybody else in the congregation is doing what he or she is called to do, I don't need to worry. I have faith that we're doing what we're called to do. I told Karen Ramos I would be short, so I'm skipping half the quotes I have for you. If anybody wants the full document, I can technically send it. I can't make copies because my printer's not working, but I can send it. There's a wonderful blog written by Reverend Dr. Janet Hunt, and she talks about different experiences of faith. And the one she talks about this year was she'd gone to the airport. She got one of those TSA pre-pass things. Did you ever get one of those? Where you get to walk on through without taking your shoes off and all that good stuff? Okay? So she got one of those, so she had extra time. She's hanging out at the airport, I forget which one, and she says, so I'm like ready fodder for this. You know those telemarketers that hang out at airports, and if you walk by and you're not fast enough, they just snag you? And they pull you in, they try to sell you something? Have you seen those? Okay, so she gets snagged by this woman. The woman's name is Thelma. And she thinks to herself, geez, this is an unusual accent. I think I know it, but I'm not sure where it's from. So she asks Thelma her name, and Thelma not only tells her name, but she tells her she's from Liberia. Now, I don't know how many people know the story of Liberia from your history days. I'm sure Mary Zuba Ingram can tell us the story of Liberia. But it's a country in Africa that was founded by freed slaves from America. And so she tells the story. And she says, I moved here, and my husband moved here, and this is my job, and I really like it. And I have a 2-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old. And our 2-year-old is here with us, but our 12-year-old is in Liberia with my grandmother. Or his grandmother, my mother. And we can't get him here. And yet she has faith that he's okay and will be okay. She worried when the Ebola crisis struck, but she still had faith. And she quotes from Corinthians about her faith. What Janet Hunt says is this: my faith has never been tested as Thelma's has. And I think this is true for me, and so I think maybe that's why it spoke to me. I have always lived within easy reach of my family. I've never really had to sacrifice or put myself at risk to be near those I love. I haven't. Have you? I've never had to worry that ones so dear to me might be taken by a virulent disease. Never had to use my cell phone minutes to do what I can to watch out for them. I've never had to fight powerful powerful systems to ensure that I might one day have all my loved ones in one place. And no, I've never had to overcome the barriers which differences in race and skin color and an unfamiliar accent can place in the way of so many of our neighbors. It is so that my life has had other challenges, and like Thelma, I have known the truth that God does not leave me nor forsake me. But even so, I found myself surprised last Sunday afternoon to encounter such a deep witness of faith in one who to me was a profoundly unexpected person. One who claims to have known great blessing, but who has experienced great heartbreak. I've not known the life that Thelma has known. But wow, what faith. Faith in unexpected places. And I think that's what Janet Hunt is trying to say to us about this passage from Scripture. We don't expect faith from a Roman centurion sent here to oppress the Jewish people. And yet that's what we find. Janet Hunt tells one more story, and then I'll move on beyond her. The call came at 4 a.m. I was on call at the hospital. They had a family in need. A baby had died. Would I come? I did not know these people whose pain was unfathomable. I did not know what to expect when I walked in there. I only knew it would be awful. For that matter, they did not know me. They only knew to say yes when asked if they wanted a chaplain. They were looking for someone, anyone, to walk in and say or do something or anything at all. As I walked across the parking lot, I found I was shaking inside, knowing I did not know what I would say or do. It doesn't matter that I've been doing this for 25 years. I still get scared sometimes. When I entered the room, the baby's mama was holding him close, weeping. I knelt down next to her, and in an act of attentive kindness, the hospital supervisor tossed me a blanket to cushion my knees. Now, I don't know about you, but as a 63-year-old pastor, when I go visit people, I'm really glad there's something soft to kneel on. When the young mother looked up and saw I was the chaplain, she pleaded with me to baptize her son. Now, I was taught in seminary it's not right to baptize those who have died. I know this is so, for baptism is not some trick we perform to open up the arms of God. I knew to my bones that the little one was already with God. I knew my simply saying so, however, would not be enough for his mother. So I brought some water and we baptized her baby as his mother helped. Mostly I stood nearby after that as family and friends arrived. Soon another family member called a priest who came as well. Leaving the hospital, leaving that baby behind was excruciating for the child's mother. She clung to me in gratitude when I offered to walk with him down to the morgue. I walked the family to the parking lot a while later. I did not know if I would ever see them again, but have been watching the obituaries ever since. I thought perhaps I would ask the funeral director to see if it would be all right to attend the child's funeral. Yesterday he made a connection with the mother and gave her my number. They had been trying to find me and told me that when we finally spoke. For I had baptized her son. Would I speak at the funeral luncheon on Friday? Would I get up and say a few words? And later, when all this is past, would it be all right if we talk again? I did not know what to say that long night that turned into morning. Still, I went not on my own authority, but on the authority of Jesus himself. Jesus, who walked into dark places of unspeakable pain, promised to go before me, and so I was able to go. That's who our God is. A God that goes into unspeakable places of immense pain to be with folks. It's what he did. It's what we're called as persons of faith to do. I did not think at the time that I said anything particularly profound. I felt I had nothing to offer which could take away the cause of her wrenching grief and guilt and pain. On the other hand, what I did was speak aloud the name of the one who could and would and will take away her grief and guilt and pain. I name the one who has ultimate authority over life and death, because this was what this young mother was looking for. And I was blessed to be the one to carry it to her. It's not easy to be a person of faith, but that's what we're all called to be. There's something inside us that when we turn and try to walk away, won't let us walk away. We can't do it. Even if we've never known God, even if we've never felt that the God that everybody else talks about is real, even if we've never felt all that warm fuzziness that other people say they feel when they pray, it doesn't mean God isn't in those dark places of unspeakable pain and grief. And there's nobody in this room, nobody on this human journey that hasn't been in at least one of those places of pain and grief. I found a story. I'm telling you, it's going to be quick, Karen. Don't worry. Of a Russian soldier. In 1972, an underground newspaper in Russia published the text of a prayer that was found in the jacket of a Russian soldier, and he had composed it just a few moments before the battle in which he lost his life in World War II. Hence my prelude into this about he was raised not to believe. And here's his prayer. The last thing he wrote before he died. Oh God, hear me. Not once in my life have I ever spoken to you, but today I feel the urge to make you an act of worship. You know that even from my infancy, they always told me you didn't exist. I, stupid, believed them. I had never marveled at your great works. But tonight I look up from out of a shell hole at the heaven of stars above me, and fascinated by their brilliant magnificence, all at once I understand how terrible the deception. I don't know, O God, if you will give me your hand, but I say this to you and you understand. Isn't it strange that in the midst of a terrible inferno, the light should appear to me and I should have discovered you? Beyond this, I have nothing to say to you. I am happy just because I have known you. At midnight, we must attack, but I have no fear. You are looking out for us. It is the signal. I have to go. It was wonderful to be with you. I want also to tell you, and you know it, that the battle will be hard. It could be that in this very night, I'll come to knock at your door. And even though up to now I haven't been your friend, when I come, will you let me come in? But what's this? Am I crying? My Lord God, you see what has happened. Only now I've begun to see clearly. Farewell, my God, I am going. It's scarcely possible that I'll return. Strange, death now has no fear for me. Don't you wonder how many other soldiers prayed a prayer so similar to God before a battle he or she was about to become part of? How many of our first responders prayed a prayer before they got out of their car to go into a place that promised not to be safe? How many of us prayed a prayer when something scary was about to happen to us? Maybe surgery. Maybe that split second of prayer we have when we look in the rearview mirror and see we are about to be hit by another car. That's what happened to a pastor friend of mine, a dear friend of Joe Evans and Scott Finances, a couple of weeks ago. And now a younger than me, vibrant, loving, compassionate pastor sits in a rehab center in a wheelchair, strapped in and slumped over because he cannot even sit up by himself. And yet his partner posts on Facebook his progress in the faith they each have in the God they so trust. Faith is about what's happening now and what's going to be happening in the future. Faith is about trusting a God that sees how hurt we can be and yet how loving we are because of the way God calls us. I know some of you knew Teresa Auger. She's been fighting a battle for over a year. And became quite suddenly very, very ill. She died 2 days ago. If you knew Teresa, one of the things that probably struck you was how beautiful her eyes were. She had the most sparkling, beautiful eyes that almost always looked out on the world with compassion. I touched base with Trista yesterday. Yesterday afternoon I saw that Teresa had asked that her organs be donated at her death. Because of how her last illness had so ravaged her body. The only organs that could be salvaged for somebody else. And those beautiful, sparkling blue eyes. And Trista, with all the compassion and love and generosity it takes of an only child, made sure that happened. That's what faith is. It's trusting God will get us through the hard times and living into the future as the compassion and love we've been called and made them do.